The First Blight, a horrific, cataclysmic event that lasted for almost 2 centuries. Hordes of violent, tainted creatures emerged from underground. Darkspawn. They ravaged across the continent, killing anyone in their path and corrupting anything they touched. At the head of the horde, an Archdemon, a dark, colossal creature in the form of a dragon. Originally one of the old gods of the winter, now twisted, corrupted. To many, this was the end of days, and entire generations lived and died fighting against these corrupted beings. Eventually, the Archdemon was defeated, at last, and many of the remaining Darkspawn retreated underground. The Blight was finally over, at least for now. Hello guys, welcome back to another Dragon Age history video. Lately I've been really into anything Grey Warden related, and I was thinking since we may potentially be going to Wise Out or have the ability to play as a Grey Warden in Dreadwolf, it would be a good time to start talking about their history. This video is meant for any Dragon Age lore fan, but especially if you haven't played the first game, make sure to stick around if you want to know more about the Grey Wardens before Dreadwolf comes out. Before I really talk about the Grey Wardens, I want to talk about the reason they exist, and the events that led up to this dark time in Thedas' history. So, if you want to know more, pour yourself a mug of strong coffee and let me tell you all about the history of the First Blight. So the First Blight started in -395 Ancient. It lasted almost 2 centuries, making it the longest Blight in Thedosian history. Before we get into the how, we need to talk a little bit about the Black City and the Old Gods, and don't worry, I'll keep this brief. So the Black City, once known as the Golden City, is a city in the Fade that can always be seen floating in the sky, no matter where in the Fade you are. According to the Chantry, it used to be the seat of the Maker. The Old Gods are sleeping beings, and no one knows what they actually are or what they look like. But they were worshipped in the form of dragons, specifically by the people of the Tevinter Imperium. It is even said that it was the Old Gods that initially told the first mages how to use magic, although that might only be legend. The Old Gods once communicated directly with their worshippers, but that stopped when the 7 Magisters, each a priest to one of the Old Gods, opened a portal that allowed them to step into the Fade physically and enter the Golden City. As a result, the city turned black, and the Magisters returned as tainted and twisted beings, the first Darkspawn. The corruption they carried infected others, turning them into Darkspawn as well. So, is this really what happened? Well, that is up for debate, as official records of this horrific event are all but long gone. The Chantry believes that the Magisters entered the city in an attempt to usurp the Maker's throne, and that they were cast out for their sinful pride, becoming the first Darkspawn in the process. The twisted Magisters then sought out the old god Dumat, slumbering deep within the earth, and corrupted him, thus starting the First Blight. While the Tevinter Imperium denies a connection between the Magisters and the Blight, we know from Corypheus that he did indeed enter the Black City. However, according to him, the city was already corrupted when he got there.
I once breached the Fade in the name of another to serve the old gods of the Empire in person. I found only chaos and corruption, dead whispers. For 1,000 years I was confused, no more. I have gathered the will to return under no name but my own, to champion withered Tevinter and correct this blighted world. Beg that I succeed, for I have seen the throne of the gods, and it was empty.
Whichever version of the blackening of the Golden City you believe, everyone agrees that the First Blight started in -395 Ancient. The Darkspawn managed to find the old god Dumat, free him from his prison, and corrupt him, turning the old god into the first Archdemon. The Darkspawn keep growing in numbers, and in -380 Ancient they start setting their focus on the Deep Roads. The signs were subtle at first. Travelers mysteriously disappearing and Dwarven patrols going missing while on duty. But nothing could have prepared the Dwarves, and the rest of Thedas for that matter, for what was to come. The First Blight was devastating for everyone who lived during that time period, but none felt the effect more so than the Dwarves. Despite their advanced technology, the Dwarves didn't stand a chance against the immense numbers of Darkspawn. Their thags began to fall one by one. and the dwarves were near the brink of extinction. The Darkspawn used the tunnels of the Deep Roads to travel to all corners of the continent, and eventually surfaced on the edges of the Tevinter Imperium. The armies of the Imperium tried to fight back against the hordes of Darkspawn, but their attempts were in vain. Their numbers did not match those of the Darkspawn, and they were unable to protect every part of the Imperium. This forced them to leave the outer territories to fend for themselves so that they could shift their focus further inward, to the city of Minrathous specifically. In -305 Ancient, there is a bit of hope for Thedas as the Order of the Grey Wardens is founded. The Wardens, all experienced veterans from the Darkspawn battles, humans, dwarves, and elves, give up their allegiances, titles, and families, and fully dedicate themselves to end the Blight, no matter the cost. They develop a special joining ritual that allows all that undergo it to sense the presence of the Darkspawn and become almost immune to their corruption. The Grey Wardens eventually take on the Darkspawn at the city of Nordbotten. According to records, the Wardens soared through the dark sky on their mighty griffins and charged into the waves of Darkspawn, taking on 10 or more enemies at a time. The Wardens won that first battle, and their methods proved to be very successful in future battles as well. At some point, a group of Ender soldiers even managed to slay the Archdemon, but the celebrations didn't last long, as Dumat would return a few days later, completely unharmed. He was slain multiple times after, and every time he would return. Warden scholars eventually find out that the only way to truly kill an Archdemon is to have a Grey Warden strike the killing blow, and with this new information, the Grey Wardens continue their campaign against the Darkspawn. In -255 Ancient, the Dwarven smith Caridin discovers a very effective way to deal with the Darkspawn. He is able to forge Golems, constructs of stone or steel infused with lyrium. This new invention came with a great cost, however, as each golem requires the soul of a living dwarf. Only volunteers at first, but later, the king forced castless, criminals and political enemies to give their lives in order for more golems to be born. When Caridin started pushing back against his king's orders, refusing to create any more golems from unwilling dwarves, he suffered the same fate. The use of golems allowed the dwarves to reclaim sections of the Deep Roads and Fallen Tykes, and they became the foundation of the dwarven armies. Just when things start looking up for the dwarves, Caridin vanishes into the Deep Roads in -248 Ancient, taking all of his followers, golems, and equipment with him. Many expeditions are sent into the Deep Roads, including a force of over 100 steel golems, but to no avail. Caridin is declared dead, and things once again start looking grim for the dwarves. Finally, in -203 Ancient, the Battle of the Silent Plains takes place. The Grey Wardens form a tremendous force made up of Tevinter, Dwarven, Raveni, and Syrian soldiers, the Syrian being a human tribe living in the area that is now known as Orlais. Together, the armies launch a coordinated attack against the Archdemon, and while it's not known who exactly made the ultimate sacrifice, they finally managed to slay the Archdemon for good. The threat of the Darkspawn remained, but without the Archdemon they became scattered and disorganized. By -195 Ancient, the Darkspawn are forced back underground, and the First Blight officially ends for the surface. Although the First Blight was officially over for the surface, the dwarves had no reason to celebrate. After the Darkspawn were forced back underground, they continued their attacks against the Dwarven Tykes, further crumbling their empire. The only way of surviving was by close cooperation and sealing most of the Deep Roads. In -40 Ancient, King Threestone of Orzammar orders to seal all Deep Roads to the remaining Dwarven kingdoms. Hormak and Gundar fall within a decade, and with no word from Kel Sharok, they are presumed lost as well, leaving the Dwarves of Orzammar to believe that they are the only ones still standing. And that is the history of the First Blight. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this history recap of the events of the First Blight. If you did, definitely keep an eye on my channel, as I will keep covering the history of things, places, and factions in Dragon Age. Especially for you new fans out there, make sure to stay tuned, as I'll be covering not only Grey Warden stuff, but also any other faction that we might encounter in Dragon Age Dreadwolf, so you'll be completely up to speed once the game releases. And if you liked this video, let me know by liking this video, or leave a comment and let me know if there's any specific subject you'd like me to cover in a future video. If you want to support the channel, check out my Patreon, or join me on my Discord server where we can talk about anything Dragon Age. That's it for now though, thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.